Bob, if you dig deep enough, it's been my experience that I I dig deep enough to see where the light is. I try to do that.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm always right, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and ultimately there will be peace. But I think peace itself is something that the world simply hasn't accepted yet. We have not accepted that there can be peace. There are
I
too many people out there who have such strong beliefs that or they're so selfish that they absolutely cannot accept that the world doesn't buy their way.
yeah.
And you know that the reason for writing um, the story about the diamond. The name of the story is Echoes in a Stone. Is to try to explain how dangerous this is that we let
Sure.
this continue.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and the story comes from the message or the warning comes from dire experience. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's a lot of interesting things happening in terms of Artemis 2, taking off for the moon, and I don't know if I'll see it in my lifetime, but having a base on the moon from which we can launch at to go to other places. I mean, yeah, I said to somebody one time, jokingly, but it's kind of true. If you want to know where mankind is going, all you have to do is watch the old Star Treks. Everything in there is coming into being. The flip phones, the MRI machines, the scanners. I mean, all that stuff is coming to fruition. And so, who knows? Maybe we'll be teleporting, to places instead of flying. There's just a whole bunch of stuff that where the world is going. I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. I didn't live through World War One or World War Two, but I can't imagine a darker time in human history than World War Two between what happened in Southeast Asia and what happened in Europe. And I mean, the number of people that were killed, and somehow we survived, and the goodness survived, and humanity survived, and we moved forward. And I'd like to believe that's what's going to happen now is that they're not to sound too much like Anne Frank, but there really are good people in the world, and we move forward. I'm sitting here in Seattle, Washington, and I'm looking out right now. This weekend was absolutely stunningly gorgeous, just incredibly beautiful. And I get up every day and I try to say to try to take a moment and look around me and think of what I do for a living. And I'm sitting here talking to you in Alaska, and I say to myself, I'm really blessed. I'm really blessed. My kids came over last night. They live right behind me now. I bought a second house, and that's where they're living, and they're gonna buy it. And so they walked, 40 yards over to sit in my backyard patio and watch a show. I mean, I think we have to appreciate the small moments in our lives. In the extraordinary life of Sam Hell, there's a line in there that gets quoted back to me all the time. And it basically says, we don't remember the big moments in life like, the war, but we remember the small moments that are in our hearts. And I think that's what really life is all about, is finding those small moments in our hearts that are what make our lives beautiful. And I think when people lose that, then I think the world becomes very dark. So I try to be an optimist, and I think I love the idea of the diamond in your book about the diamond, because I'm one of those guys that I'll watch all those shows. I said to my kids last night sitting on the patio, there was a show going on about the ocean, and I said, "You think there's aliens at the bottom of the ocean? I mean, we know less about the bottom of the ocean than we know about space. And you think there could be, you watch those shows and then they both looked at me and they're like, I don't know, So that's always been a very fascinating thing for me. So I'm anxious when you get that book done. I'd love to read it.
all right. Well, you will be one of the first. I'll make sure you get a ARC really quickly. Um, I want to touch on a couple of things you just
Sure.
said. First, about community and family. I'm very fortunate. I mean, I raised two kids, sent them off to college, fully expecting that they would never come back to Alaska, and both of them did. And both of them live within 10 minutes of my house. And my
Yeah.
grandkids are within 10 minutes of my house.
Ah,
Uh,
can't
my
be better.
daughter's my daughter's a theater grad, okay? Hated theater, came back here, and she now runs all the logistics for an environmental engineering company. Um, my son's a captain for Alaska Airlines, grew up flying with me. The business career, nah, he said, I'd rather go fly airplanes. So we were sitting around a smoky campfire one day with a bunch of my buddies, and uh, all of us came here for the same reason. We came for the adventure and stayed because it was a really good place to raise kids. And the guys just looked over and said, well, then go do that, you know. And here he's got, you know, he's 22, 23 years old, just graduated from University of Montana, on his way to get his MBA. Next thing you know, he's down at Flight Safety International and absolutely loves his career, makes a ton of money, gets up every morning and goes and looks at the world from 40,000 feet, you know.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love to take that same kind of feeling into characters. I like characters that, you know, in opening the description of them, the description is how they feel, not how they look, and then develop how they look along the way. But I like to develop a character in a way that they look at a problem, and the first thing you know about them is how they see a problem and
Sure.
how it might be dealt with. And that's kind of how I raise my kids. You know, look at it first, take a deep breath, okay, and then figure out how to go fix it. And you know, I'm kind of sorry that neither of my kids have followed me into any of my careers because I've had five of them. Although I've loved to fly my whole life, as you well know.
Sure.
But you know, my daughter, I think may eventually step into some writing now that she has got her kids to the point where they're out of the house most of the time. I think she may start doing some writing. And your daughter just started writing.
Yes, she did. She did, and I'm excited for her because, you know, she does innately the things that I teach, and you know, she's never taken a class from me. And I teach a seminar, as you know, it's called the Novel Writing Intensive with Stephen James. We'll be in Orlando this year. We were in Tennessee, Nashville last year, and she came out of the blue and said, "Can I go to your conference?" And I said, "Well, you know, honey, you got to have 50 pages written." And she said, "I do." And it just blew me out of the water. And then, you know, I had to read her pages on the plane flying out to Tennessee. And of course, I was scared to death because I kept thinking to myself, what if they're terrible? I mean, what do I say? This is my daughter. And not only were they not terrible, they were really, really well done. And, um, you know, I think there is a writing gene, Rodger. I really do. That's not to say that a craftsman cannot learn the skill and the trade and learn all the little things that make a book worth reading and make it even more than worth reading, make it memorable. But I do believe there's also a writing gene. And when I talk to people, I can see they're either nodding their head or they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? And the people that are nodding their heads are the ones that say, when you say,
Yeah.
they'll say, where do your characters come from? And I'll say, I don't know. They just appear. They appear in my head. They appear in my heart. They come out of the blue. They start talking to me. They do things I've never done in my life, but they do them authentically. I mean, I've come to the point, much like Stephen King talks about, he calls it telepathy. What I really talk about it, I just say that there's a faith, and that faith is that you're writing the story that you're meant to write because you're writing about characters that you're meant to write about. And you're not so much creating the story as you are transcribing a story that's already been told somewhere out there, somewhere, which just goes back to your idea of
Yeah.
different worlds, but that there's a story out there that's already been told. And I'm just blessed to be able to tell it, to transcribe it so that others can read it. So when I get these wonderful emails from readers saying, don't ever stop writing you know, your story spoke to me from the heart. That's an intriguing statement. You know, how can somebody sitting at his desk write a story that touches the heart of a person he's never met, living in a place he's never visited and never will? How does that happen? And I think that's what Stephen King talks about. That's what Diana Gabaldon talks about. That's what I think you probably know, that I've come to know, is there's not really a good explanation for it other than to say that you've created something that was meant to be written.